All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're looking at a really powerful editorial from The Property Economist that digs into a huge issue in Ghana, the threat of demolition. But as we're about to see, this isn't just about illegal buildings. It's about a system that might be failing the very laws it's supposed to uphold.
So where does this all start? Well, it kicks off with one single, pretty shocking announcement that sent a chill through a lot of communities.
And there it is, a statement from a municipal engineer. Super clear, no room for confusion. On the surface, it sounds pretty reasonable, right? If you build on land that you don't legally own, you could lose everything. Seems totally black and white.
But of course, the big question is it really that simple? The editorial we're breaking down argues that nope, not at all. That statement might be technically true, but it's hiding a much bigger, much messier story. And that brings us to the real heart of the argument, that behind this simple threat, there's what the editorial calls a profound institutional lie.
So you've got two completely different stories here. The official one is easy. Blame the person who built the house. They broke the law. But the real story, according to this analysis, is that the system itself, the very authorities in charge of permits, had a legal duty to stop this from ever happening. Their failure is what created the problem they now want to fix with a bulldozer.
So this is the key takeaway. Yes, building on unregistered land is against the rules. But it's an institutional lie to just pretend the authorities are innocent here. They were supposed to be the gatekeepers, and the argument is that they basically left the gate wide open, and now they're angry that someone walked through it.
Okay, so how exactly did the system fail? Well, it all comes down to some very specific legal duties that were apparently completely ignored. And look, the law is crystal clear about this. It lays out 3 things the assemblies absolutely must do. First, they have to create development plans. Second, they have to see definitive proof of ownership before they even think about issuing a building permit. And third, even if a building is illegal, they have to follow a very strict, formal process before they can demolish it. These aren't just suggestions, they are legal requirements.
And this gets to a huge legal blunder. The authorities were supposed to demand a land title. That's the ironclad official proof of ownership. But the editorial says that a lot of the time, they just accepted a registered deed. A deed just proves a transaction happened. It's like accepting a store receipt as proof you own a car instead of the official vehicle title. It's a massive, massive difference.
And get this, here's the real paradox. Assemblies are threatening to tear down buildings for not following the official plan, but in many cases, that plan doesn't even exist, or it's decades out of date. They're basically trying to enforce rules in a vacuum that they themselves were supposed to fill.
Now, this isn't just someone's opinion. The editorial points out that the courts in Ghana have actually ruled on this exact kind of thing before. And wow, their decisions are pretty eye-opening.
Check this out. We have actual court cases. In the Brainsfield case, the Accra Metropolitan Assembly, the AMA, just didn't follow the rules. And the court said, nope, that demolition was unlawful, and fined them. And this isn't a new thing either. The Randolph case, all the way back in 1975, set the same precedent. Just because you have the power to demolish something doesn't mean you can just ignore the legal process to do it.
This quote from the piece really nails it. The courts weren't saying the assemblies didn't have the authority, they were punishing them for using that authority illegally. You see the pattern here, right? It's a history of not following the proper procedure.
And let's just sit with that number for a second. Over 300,000 Ghana cedis. That's not just a little slap on the wrist. That is the real financial price that taxpayers end up paying when an assembly breaks its own rules. It's a pretty powerful warning about making the same mistake again. So, with all this failure and legal history in mind, what's the solution? Well, the editorial doesn't just point out problems, it suggests a clear way to get some accountability.
The key idea here is systemic complicity. It's such a powerful term. It means the assembly isn't just an innocent bystander that failed to stop a problem. By handing out permits when it shouldn't have actually, it became a partner, an accomplice, in creating the very problem it now wants to destroy.
So what can be done? The editorial calls for 3 things. First, transparency. Audit the permits and see if the assembly messed up. Second, follow the law. Stop with the radio announcements and serve actual written legal notices. And third, and this is the big one, finally do the job you were required to do from the start. Create the development plans that everything else is based on.
And this is really the final word, the most powerful line in the whole piece. An assembly that brings in a bulldozer without following its own rulebook isn't enforcing the law. At that point, it becomes the single biggest lawbreaker in the entire story.
Which leads us with this final question to think about.
When the system itself is this broken and this complicit, is it really fair to put all the blame and all the pain on the individual citizen at the very end of that broken chain? It's a question about justice that goes way beyond just concrete and land titles.